I would like to thank our sponsor, who happens to be Synovus Energy. Is there anyone from Synovus here at all? Well, they deserve a round of applause. I don't know how familiar you are with Charley Harper, his work, but the show that is in there right now is one of the best hung shows, not only in Allen County, but in this side of Ohio. And it's all due to Dr. Shearer back there, who intercepted these pieces coming and brought them here to Lima, who lovingly staked them all out, balanced that show, painted the gallery. All three of the ladies that helped her, they deserve a round of applause. I don't know if you're familiar with other art galleries and that sort of thing, but that is a top-notch show. The sad thing is, on the 20th of April, it goes. It's down. In fact, all of that will be archived, put away from the Springfield Museum, and it won't be shown like this ever again. So please, take your time, bring people in and see it before it disappears. Okay. Now for the dirty business of talking about an artist. Truly, I had the privilege of meeting Charley Harper in person. Has anybody else in this room met him? Wasn't he amazing?
Oh, he was so funny.
Yeah, this guy was just so alive. And his wife Edie was the same way. And if you would listen to him present his work, I'm thinking it goes back in 1990. Charley came to Lima and he would stay at a dentist, a friend of mine. His name was Dr. Goldman, and his wife, and they worked through the Lima Art Association at the time. But they would sponsor and bring in guest artists, which was really helpful to the community. Anyway, Charley gave a presentation out at the branch, and that night I just happened to bring my entire art club, about 25 kids from Perry High School, to come and listen to it. They were spellbound. They couldn't believe it. In fact, one kid, I saw him a month ago. He came by into my studio. I said, guess what I get to do? What's that, Mr. Lauer? I said, I get to talk about Charley Harper. He says, you know, I still have his artwork. And I always encourage my students that no matter what it costs, now this sounds a little crazy, and no matter how big it is or small it is, if it is something you like, buy it. And he did. He actually took out, I believe he borrowed money from his parents. He bought a print. He looked right at me and said, I still have that print and I love it. And so as a gift, my wife and I buy each other things all the time. She bought, there's the one hanging out in the hallway there. It's with the black bears. And it's called Blackberry Jam. And it's 70 out of 1,000 prints. That sounds like a lot, but the Harper editions now are up to 2,000, 2,500 prints per edition. Got to meet Charley. Had him sign the print, had him sign a little thing wishing my art club good luck with a ladybug on it. I'll never forget it. His demeanor was soft. He was soft-spoken, but so clever. His mind just worked spherically, not flat. And I could sit here and tell you all these facts. I could say his middle name was Charles Burton Harper. He was born in West Virginia. They lived on a small family farm. And I could go into the details of his birth date. You know, in 1922 was when he was born, and Edie was born the same year. He attended the Art Academy of Cincinnati. He was one of the best students they ever had, literally. And believe it or not, he and his wife, I gotta get this right, they fell in love on the first day they met each other in a life drawing class. Now, isn't that romantic? Yeah. And you think, oh, why are you filling us with this? I'll tell you why a little later, because artists have a seedy reputation, you know? And Charley didn't. He was the exact opposite. They were both interrupted by World War II. Like every part of that generation, didn't matter what you were doing, you went and served. And so Charley, he was, oh, I skipped one here. Oh, I guess I did. Charley was in the trenches with buddies, and he ran a mortar. He operated a mortar. And between mortar rounds, he would do very quick drawings of his buddies sitting there in the trench, or wherever they were, and he would give them to them to fire them off home to their spouse or loved ones. And they loved his work. He said his exact quote about the war was, "I learned to draw quickly." And you could sure see why. This is a drawing of him after the war. He had just gotten done in 1944 with it all. A self-portrait. But I want you to look at the command of drawing. I want you to look at the contour lines in this picture. Can you guys see this okay, or should we? You want it darker? Please speak out.
Good.
Let's try it a little darker. Yeah. Sometimes these lights have a way of glaring on you, and we can adjust that. So if you would, yeah, bump out a few of those. There we go. Is that better? Mm-hmm. That helps? Good.
Yes, yes.
I want you to appreciate the affinity that he had for light and shadow and form and contour. I could go on and on as an art teacher about this. You know, teaching for 35 years affects you that way because you not only, all these works of art in here have elements of design and drawing in them, even from the kids that line the city schools. So it's a discipline that is learned and taught by teachers. Charley was no exception to this. Every one of them learned. But you know, I could go on and on about that and tell you more and more, but you could get that on Wikipedia. I want to go deeper. I want to talk about Charley because when he was at the academy, certain things happened. He studied under a teacher named Joseph Albers. Joseph Albers was a Bauhaus teacher. If you're familiar at all with any art movements in Germany, the Bauhaus came through. These were top-notch designers and draftsmen that just knew. They were breaking edges of art, and it tied into psychology. I mean, they were bringing stuff into art, and minimalism began, surrealism, all of those isms. Really, the nest egg is the Bauhaus. Well, the Academy at Cincinnati brought in Joseph Albers, and Joseph had and still has an effect on every art student that passes in the United States because he was like the icon of color. And one of the most outstanding things in our show is, and I hear people coming out of it going, "Did you see all those colors?" And you know, I have friends, even in this room, that are colorblind. And it almost makes me cry because I think, wow, all they see is shades of gray, green, browns, you know. And I've even taught students who were legally blind that were colorblind. But boy, could they create. And I realize how powerful your eyes are and how much your vision means. But color is such a part of it. Color originally was used by the artist to create a definition of form. When the Bauhaus artist came to Cincinnati, his whole emphasis was, no, color for color's sake. Just use color as color. Quit trying to monkey around with it and create a form out of it. Because the old tradition was that. Also, there was a married couple named the Stampers, Mabel and Wilson Stamper, that taught at Cincinnati, and they were very influential on Charley and Edie both, but in the area of printmaking, especially in silk screening. And that's what 90% of the gallery is full of, are silk screens. Does anybody understand serigraphy or serigraphy? You understand what I mean by silk screening? Okay, if you don't feel ignorant, my gosh. But if you understand what it is, basically it's like taking a screen off a screen door and putting stencils over it, and then printing over the top of that with an ink and squeegee, and it drives the ink through the screen and stops the ink where the stencil is. And that's exactly how these prints were made. Only they're very, very beautiful and accurate. The turning point for Charley was in 1947 when he, and I want to back up to my first slide, when these two got married. And you think, oh, that's so romantic, Herb, it is. But he got a scholarship. It was the Stephen Wilder Scholarship for traveling. So this enabled Charley to get in his wife's Chevy and go west and have the travel expense paid for. Isn't that great? Back in 1947, that was big beans. Charley got the award because he was the best student they had. So here they are, and they're out from underneath the supervision of education, and they begin this journey of trying to find out more of themselves in their work. When you have educational oversight, and a teacher has to be aware of this all the time, you can overteach. You ever had a teacher that overteaches? Yeah, nothing you do is quite what they want. And so they grab the pencil from your hand or draw it for you or whatever. And you, oh, no, they wouldn't do that. Yes, they do. And not just art teachers. That happens in every field. You have to be careful as a teacher. There's a fine line there between influencing and taking over. It's not that Charley was dominated by them, and he and Edie could get along so well at everything they saw and did. They had to figure it out for themselves, though. They got to a small place called the Grand Canyon. You ever been there? Yeah, my wife and I sat on the south wall of the Grand Canyon for 3 days, and we never moved. Now, we did go into the bathroom, and we did get something to eat, but we would come back to that same location. 3 days. I've never had something absorb me so much. Well, apparently that hit Charley. And, you know, he had a scratch board, and he did a watercolor of it, and he was doing his usual, now you have to make this look real. We have to use perspective. All these things are in his head from his teachers. Use this color, not that one, Charles. Remember to and it was affecting him to the point where he did this. He set his paper down, he turned his back, and he walked away from what he was seeing. And you think, why did he do that? He could draw so well. What's the matter with this guy? You know, is he Ipswich? You know, if you already know something is a success, why not enjoy it even more? There's more to art than that. There's more to music than that. More than all the arts to that. There's a poet in here today who constantly brings me his latest poem because you know what? It's better than the one he brought the last time. And this is how the arts are. They demand of you everything within you if you are willing to take the chance to express them. But here's the problem. You know, he walked away from the idea of recording it, shading it, making it realistic, and instead he found the essence of the subject. Now this is really key. After he was done with his watercolor without looking at the Grand Canyon, he said, direct quote, "It was the most exciting painting I had ever done in my life." And after that, he never looked back. Charley just went ahead with what he knew best and discovered more of himself, and Edie joined him. The picture plane is flat. Leave it flat. Quit trying to put all these other components on it to change it. Color is meant to be highlighted by its complement, not by just adding white or shading it with black. Building form could be let go of to simplify. It's a complete reverse of what he was taught. The environment could be decluttered. I can take out certain things that confuse the viewer, and I can clean the picture up to keep it well balanced. Nascent ideas, and I had to look the word up of nascent. It means emerging. New ideas came to mind. He would see flowers and trees and birds and eggs hatching, and all this emergence of life came true to Charley and Edie with the joy of simplification. You don't need all the essence of the sky behind whatever's happening. And so what you're looking at is what Charles later on called, basically he called it a realistic geometric simplification. Minimalism. Realistic minimalism, he called it. And he had to laugh at that because that's even an oxymoron. The Harper stated that their minds work parallel. Edie and Charley work parallel. This does not work, I would say 90% of the time. Two artists that get married do not stay married very long. And I'm serious about this. And the tragedy there is each one has an essence that they're trying to find, and they may not coincide. Charley and Edie were exactly the amazing opposite of that. They were in harmony with one another. In fact, they would challenge each other in their own realms of things that other people had never considered. The Harper stated that their minds worked in parallel. They delighted in absurdities. They started studying people like this guy, Jean Miro. And this was a Spanish artist. Have you ever heard of him? Anybody? Okay. Ironies, incongruities, oxymorons, puns become part of their work. They sparked new ideas within the Harpers as never before. They shared these art heroes, and Miro had this fantasy type of thing. Artwork like this started Dadaism, Surrealism. This is 1940. Can you imagine painting that in somebody would grab you and take you to the hospital,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Look at that. That's even wild today, by today's standards, isn't it? But what a great thing. When Charley and Edie saw these things, they're like, yeah, this guy has guts to do what he wants. And he's beautiful at what he's doing. So they looked at other artists very similar. Paul Klee is another one. A German, Swiss artist. This one is A Glimmer of Light, and it shows fish. But do you see the sort of kernel of truth in their work along with the Harpers? Can you see that? Mm-hmm. See how they sort of intermesh? I show this because I want you to realize no artist is an island. They can develop their own ism, but that doesn't make them an island. They are connected to a line of other artists that come before them, and another line after them. So no artist is an island. Having found their visual space, they finally released themselves like this. This is one of Charley's early works. And I look at this and I'm like, what's the what if in this one? Does anybody know? Can you tell me in your own words? I had a lot of fun with Dan Hodges, who gave a talk as a naturalist looking at Charley Harper's work. And the reason why I had fun with him, he knew the nature side of things, not so much the art side. And so when we got together on it, we were kind of quizzing and doing a little, not headbutting, but a lot of fun back and forth. But take a look at this. Does anybody know what the insect is in the middle?
Aphid?
An aphid. Yeah. What's the problem with an aphid? What do? How do they live?
Rose bushes.
They what?
I'm thinking rose bushes.
Yeah, what about on a rose, let's say?
They
What do they
eat
do
them.
to
They
it?
eat parasites.
Yeah, they suck the juice right out of it. If you've ever, cut a rose or a flower off, and you turn it around and look under the leaf, and the leaf stamens and the stems, what are all these green things crawling all over? They're aphids. Early on, our answer to that was a chemical answer called DDT. Okay? Charley saw the results of DDT at the end of the food web in all of the eagles that were dying in America. His answer was, find something in nature that is the natural predator of the aphid. But then he had fun with it. He said, what would happen if 4 ladybugs converged on the last aphid on the leaf? What could they do? Well, they could only get so close because they're big fat mouths. And how would you feel if you were that aphid, right? It's like, oh man, anywhere you move, you're going to get eaten alive. But he had so much fun with the ladybugs. And here again, I look at this work and I think to myself, If Brett Harper was here, their only son, and I had Christine, she knows him personally, I had her invite him up here multiple times. I don't know why he couldn't make it, but I'm sorry he couldn't. But I would love to talk to him about the fun that he must have had with his parents. But I see these ladybugs. Wouldn't it be fun to have a Disney World of Harper World? And have bumper cars that are ladybugs and chase aphids around? Oh, my mind goes crazy. My wife's gonna give me some medication tonight. Anyway, how about this one? Look at the fun in this. Titles become so much a part of his work. And Charley calls this, he used the prose in order to help him create the art imagery. He calls this romance at the Richter scale. And if you've ever been or seen pictures, I remember my son and I watching National Geographic one time of two whales mating. And what was nice about that, I didn't have to explain the birds and the bees after it was over. Because the parts of the whale are so obvious that it's hard to ignore. But this describes a whale courtship, according to Charley. It's a gigantic, frantic, romantic antic that takes place in the Atlantic. How about that for a rap song? Charley went on to say, boy, you talk about a heavy date. Look out for the bridal tidal wave. And this is how he gave his presentations. He was wonderful with his titles. A few unknown facts about Charley. First off, he was a terrible bird watcher. He would tell you, when I go somewhere and I take my field glasses and I have my field guide with me and somebody says, look, up there, a wren. He says, by the time I get my field guide put in my pocket, pull up my glasses, get them in focus, the bird's gone. Yep. And he said, I am the world's worst field guide person. So what he did, he used these field guides, photos, observation notes, books on wildlife as departure points. He would look at these things and then leave them behind. They were simply a reference for him. Charley was so flooded with ideas that it was hard for him to keep up. And the more ideas that came to his mind, the simpler his images got. And he kept boiling down into curves and dots and circles and lines. And his geometry employs a signature style that only Harper did it. Nobody had done this up to that point. Each image is meant to sneak up on you as a viewer. I have people that come back. Every time I'm here, I stop in and spend about an hour in that gallery, and I see something new every time. That's how complex this is. He forces you to really look and not just see the object. There's kind of a sneak up that says, I got you. And it's like, Charley, you ornery. And so there's a relationship. There's a relationship to look at between the animal, its environment, and the relationship they have with each other. I'm going to do something that I never have done before on any presentation. This was drawn by yours truly back in 1993. I had an advanced drawing class at Perry School with about 8 students, and I had a friend in the Park District at the time. His name was Kevin Haber. He was just a young squirt, And I told Kevin, I said, is there any way, do you guys have stuffed animals? And he said, well, sure, Herb. And I said, could I stop in and can we check them out like in the library? No, can't do that. But he said, I can bring them to Perry School for you. So the next morning I go to my art room and there's 10 of these beautiful mounted animals. Perfect, because I needed to freeze the real object in light. My kids got tired of looking at photographs from National Geographics to get pictures of animals, especially the exotic animals. They couldn't go to Africa and see an elephant. So instead of photographs, we had the real thing. Stuffed, frozen, but the real thing. What a challenge. So one of them looked at me and said, hey, Lauer, you're teaching us, why don't you draw one? Okay. And so in about 2 weeks' time, 45-minute period, I pulled this one out. And one of my students said, dang, that's pretty good, Lauer. I really like the way you made that eye yellow. And I started laughing. I said, yellow? He says, yeah, you used yellow in there, that eye, didn't you? And I said, look again. And it's surrounded by other colors that make it look yellow. It's the same color as the paper that's drawn on it. And all of a sudden, I started talking to my students about how to make things look real. Okay, how do you make them pop off the paper? This is what you're paid to do as an art teacher, really. And, you know, what parts do you emphasize and make bigger, and why? What parts do you overlap to make it foreshorten? What's in front, what's in back? How dark do you make the colors between foreground and background in order to succeed? And so we talked about things like that. And how do you create movement? Well, you can use a stuttered edge. I would talk to professors like Jay Bumbaugh at Bluffton College, Tom Gordon at Ohio Northern. I knew them all, and I really enjoyed their draftsmanship, but I would pick their brain, pick their brain, pick their brain. Dana Loomis is another one at Ohio University, Brinsley Terrell at Kent State. And so when you talk to other artists about what to teach and how to teach it, the best way is by example. But here's my question to you. Now, my goal was to make this realistic, okay? But what's the essence of this picture? What else can we say besides realism, realism, realism? Boy, that looks real, Herb. Pat on the back, way to go, bravo. Yeah, but I got more to say than that. And this is what Charley and Edie confronted, okay? They confronted this. Every artist has to face this. Whether they do realism or some other ism, it doesn't matter. Every artist has to face, I want to express something more than that. I want to go beyond technique. Because if you don't, you get caught in what I call techniqueism. And techniqueism is an end in itself. Once you've made it, okay, there's my realistic picture of an owl. So, well, you could do more of them, Herb, and I did. I did a bunch of predatory birds, birds of prey. Let's look at something else. I want to, you know, maybe I'm dwelling on this too much. The book that I read said, don't ever compare Charley Harper to John James Audubon, and here I am. So I want to do this comparison. Audubon is on the left here. And you've all heard of Audubon? Okay. Usually they would kill a specimen, bring it into a studio, he'd lay it out, comb the feathers down, and lay branches next to it, draw as realistic as he could, as quickly as he could, but very, very realistic, time-consuming, every nuance of the animal. And he always demanded that it be a male-female species in order to have the complete set. Sometimes they were placed on branches of things that they ate. Other times there would be a snake ready to, you know, kill a bird in a nest or whatever, to create a little excitement and tension. On the right side is Roger Tory Peterson. And if anybody have a Peterson guidebook? I do. Yeah. And they're very informative. Usually a profile view, usually an arrow to indicate the differences, what to look for very quickly. Remember, these are field guide references. They're to glance at and then say, oh yeah, that's a male. Okay. And usually the symbol male or female to determine the sexes. Sometimes there's maps at the bottom to show migration routes. And there's also maps at the bottom to show you their exact pattern of habitat. That's what I was trying to say. Let's see what he does differently. Here's the blackbirds done by Charley Harper. Now we're talking about the same birds. Okay? I want to back up. Just put it in slow motion here. Blackbird here, blackbird here, blackbird there. What is that guy thinking? Now, Now, I've got some questions for you. Let's see if there's some naturalists. And I'm going to embarrass my son. He has his degree in environmental biology, so I'm going to hit him up. Paul, how many male blackbirds are in this flock?
Count the wing bars.
Yeah, but how many? I mean, are there half of them?
All of them.
All of them.
Okay. What a strange thing to do. Why would Charley Harper just show the males migrating? What time of year is it? That's obvious. Fall, yeah, the leaves, and it's sort of a gray overcast day. Look who's in the middle up above here. Who's that, a little dash up? That's a little cardinal up there. You get a half a cardinal. And you know, if you look at his work closely, it's like, oh my gosh. But why would you show just the males in the flock migrating? This is their habit. This is what they do. The males migrate separate from the females. Did you know that?
No.
Whoa. So Charley's taught you something that Roger Tory Peterson hasn't done, and also hopefully struck a hunger in your heart to go look this up yourself. You become the search engine for the animal. Isn't that wonderful? All of these things Charley does are used to get you to think about the species. It's more than just a pretty picture of a bird. It's more than just the great horned owl and all the silly feathers that I spent 2 weeks on coloring and arranging in order to create it to look real. Nothing wrong with that, but it goes way beyond the exercise. The answer to all of these demands for an artist is they have to live independently. So I want to bounce around here. Charley and Edie had to create a livelihood. Charley was asked to illustrate for Ford Times. Ford Times was a monthly magazine that came out by Ford Motor Company in order to encourage people to see the USA. Oh no, that's Chevrolet. But in order to see the United States and hopefully use a Ford car, right? So they sent out this magazine called Ford Times, and Charley illustrated all of that, and Edie helped him. And it was a great bread and butter winner. But you know what? He had a war with this person right here. She's the perfect housewife. And he got so tired of it, it was just like doing a Barbie doll for Mattel. It's like, gee, she's swell. But the world isn't perfect like Barbie. And it's not perfect like this woman here or her husband. Now they did it in order to fulfill the need to have some income, okay? And they also advertised in books. Charley was published in over 400 periodicals at the time. Golden Publications came out with the Golden Book of Biology. He illustrated the entire thing. If you have a copy of that, it's worth about $485 now. Okay? The commissions that he fulfilled with other people, he and Edie opened a serigraphic studio, and everything that they did at that time was to give them enough money to afford financial freedom to do the other stuff. They even went and did scenic railroads, and I have a friend in here today that just loves our locomotive. He loves our locomotive. He's going to celebrate the 100th anniversary of our Shea locomotive here in a little bit. But he's here today, and I put this in here special for him. That is, it's called Cass, West Virginia. You ever been there? They have our Shea locomotive, and you can take tour rides up steep grades, and there's our Shea putting along right there. And I asked Hannah, our art historian, I said, do you realize what do those leaves represent? They're trees. They're not leaves. They're trees. Okay? And as hard as that is to understand, remember, Charley's boiling everything down to the essence. You don't need to show every little leaf on every little branch in order to create a tree. Use the simplest part of the tree, the leaf, and multiply it. and create colors off of it, and you've got a whole forest.
Just,
Fantastic art. So here they were still doing this artwork while they were trying to discover on their own. And Charley, toward the end of it, used his art for this purpose, was to help save the environment. This one is called Coming Soon, Quail Valley, Condominiums. This was done in 1990. And what really ticked him off, the very thing that would attract people in there to buy a condo is being destroyed before they even get there. You see the front of a plow here, a bulldozer, and it's taking all of the trash out of the woods. And all that trash has all those insects and all that beautiful humus and everything combined in it in order to support the wildlife birds that are in the foreground. And you know, the tragedy here is one of them, looks like one of them didn't quite make it. Well, he put these in front of people and was like, yeah, I don't get that. And then you notice this butterfly flying away here. You know, my son's an entomologist too, and he knows the rarity of the white tiger. And all of these things vanish in a matter of minutes for the sale of a property. It ticked Charley off. He and Edie were about done with all of the commercial prospects. They evolved together. I think this is a beautiful picture of Edie, early on in her life. And I want to talk about her work in this show real quick too. She loved cats. She had an affinity for cats, and it's very obvious here. The one on the left is called Nine Tails. Okay? Now, tell me, you know, if we smirk at that title, why? What's a nine tails?
Cattails.
Cattails, okay.
Oh, there's only 8 though. 7.
There,
Just one?
I cut
it's
one.
the mouse tail.
Yeah, I cut one off down
Well,
here.
it's the mouse tail.
Yeah, there's a couple
Oh,
more
it's a mouse.
that got
Yeah,
cut
that
off.
makes 9.
I had to sort of
And the
crop
cat's
them.
tail
You're
is
right.
9.
Yeah.
I didn't do much justice.
What
But
is 9?
what's a nine tail?
The cat.
The cat,
9 lives.
9 lives.
The whip. Cat of 9 tails. Yeah. Whip.
Yeah, the whip, right? The cat of 9 tails. Okay, this one is called Crazy Quilt, Crazy Cat, right? And I think you know what a crazy quilt is. If you don't, we'll talk later. I want to keep moving. This one's called Peepkin, and I think it's so neat. You're looking at the cat's head facing us, the front paw. This is the tail of the cat, but what's this in front of it?
But, pumpkin.
It's a pumpkin. It looks like his buttkin, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
See that? They sneak up on you. This is what I'm telling you. Big, small, bright, dull, you know, large. It's very clever stuff. These people were genius at arrangement. So, you know, we're going to be done here real quick, but I want you to spend some time in the gallery and enjoy it. This one is called Couch Potatoes. Potatoes, yeah.
That's cool.
And they're all
I
snuggled
know,
up.
it's crazy.
And you know, look at the patterns of the lines,
I
and
know.
you can see the couch in that. This next one, we'll end with that. This is called Cat Carson. Yeah. And he, you know, obviously of the Wild West. We go on now, and she liked the Bible, and she liked children's nursery rhymes. And so we go on to this one. And this is called Dan's Den. So tell me what you're looking at. First off, how many lions are there?
5, 11, 11 and a mommy.
11.
And a mommy.
Okay. You're saying, well, I don't see the others. Well, the eyes represent a lion, right? And remember, they're minimalizing. They're paring it down. Now, whenever you see somebody in clothing that the Harpers have done on their own, they always put them kind of in this burrito wrap. Okay? It looks like strands of... And that's okay. Remember, would you be concerned about fingers and toes when you're talking about Daniel in the lion's den? That's not the story. They don't talk about Dan's toes and fingers. They talk about the lion's den. What's peculiar about Dan here? Who notices? Who said?
He's asleep.
He's asleep. Look at his face.
Happy.
Would you be happy sleeping next to lions? What's he know that the lions don't know? Who's protecting him? See? And just without even saying it or spelling it out or putting a little arrow or a male and female sign on it, look what the Harpers have done. And it goes on and on. Here's this one's
I
called.
love that.
You like this one?
Oh, yeah.
This one's called Net Profit.
I love that.
Yeah. So tell me about that. What parable are we talking about? What did Jesus do in some of his miracles? Remember? They had been fishing all day, and they caught no fish. And all of a sudden they come to shore, and Jesus looks at them and says, "Hey, go out again. Just go out again and have faith." So he takes them out again. Well, how many fishermen are there? 12. Who would that represent? The prophets, the disciples. Yeah, it's called net profits. Again, it's a double play. It's an oxymoron. Look at the fun they have by filling those nets. And the whole question there is, okay, the boat's long. It's right down in the water. Is it going to sink? And that was the problem in the parable. Fantastic ideas. Just so simplified, but so true. Charley, in his essence with Edie, and I want to show these pictures because they say so much about their relationship. Remember I said how hard it is? Like, for example, Mabel Stamper and Wilson Stamper divorced, and she went down to an island next to Sanibel and lived as a recluse. But she was completely wounded inside because of his infidelity. I could go on and on. I mean, Frida Kahlo and her husband, Diego Rivera, and they were Frida got in a car wreck and was crippled and in pain, and all the pictures that she shows, I mean, there's veins and blood coming out of her and everything. They are so sad. And Diego's out there literally whoring around. It's a double tragedy, really. And so their art was unrelated, they were unrelated, there was so much harmony. But look at this couple. Look at what their art did for them. And then I want you to think, Charley says this about Edie. He said, a painter, a printmaker, a photographer and a weaver, a homemaker, a mother, a wife, and a best friend. And he could look at her and say, Edie, look at the last work that I've done. Tell me what you think of it. And there was no preconditioned thought process. She could look at him and say, Charley, that's lousy over there. You need to change this. Or, Charley, why don't you look at my work and tell me, well, you need to pick up that color a little more. And they would do it lovingly to help each other to create a better language. She is just as involved in his work as he is in hers. And our show proves that. How much? Wow. I'm sorry. This is one of the last things he did. Charles died in 2007. It is called Scary Scenario. On the left side, and by the way, he always started with a simple sketch. Just a simple, here's my thought, this is what I'm going to do. And then he would take it into his studio, and his table looked like a hurricane hit it, but he would cut pieces of paper out. And he would line them up and arrange it and create his work off of those scrap pieces of paper. So the original thought is, what if? And on the left, and here was the final question. What if? What are we looking at? Who's going to be brave enough to raise their hand? I promise I won't embarrass you.
I think it's a drowning polar bear because our ice is melting because of what we're doing. And the cardinal maybe is a sign of hope somewhere.
Wow. Give her a hand. I mean, really. See, and yeah, okay, we have the color of the sky. We have the color of the water. How much of that picture is water?
Most of it.
Do you realize, you know, right now we're talking about taking over Greenland because we have a president that can't say no. But I want you to understand something. Greenland has the second largest ice field in the world next to the Antarctic. The problem is, if those melt, we're looking at 7 meters of seawater approaching every shoreline in the world. Currently, that would affect over 2 billion people that would have to literally move away from their coastline. So as you look at this and you say, well, that's a cute answer to a problem, it's more than that. What is the likelihood of a cardinal ever seeing a polar bear? No way.
Yeah.
We could build a wall.
But guess what? It's coming, isn't it? And it's not to necessarily frighten you, but to get you to think. Why is he putting these animals in such odd relationships? They don't exist this way right now. That's right, but they could. Think about it. Think about our Earth. Be careful. You know, well, when I was in graduate school, I read Buckminster Fuller, and Charley studied Bucky too. But Bucky came out with a book called Spaceship Earth. And this came out in the 1960s, and he talked about the flora and the fauna of the entire ionosphere clear down to the benthic level of the ocean, 14 miles. And then he took the synergetic formula of the whole planet Earth and stated, we only have this much air, this much water, this much land, this much food, and right now there's only 2.5 billion people. That was back in 1960. How many people are on the Earth now?
Too many.
And more coming. So, you know, in the next 10, 15 years, they're looking at 8 billion. Now, these are the same people like you and I that demand the same things from our planet in order to live. Not necessarily thrive, and this is survival, folks. Think about that. Last one, and I don't mean to leave you on a sour note. The intentional selection, simplification that Harper does is never meant to bore the viewer. Rather, as the viewer, you were invited into this picture to really look at the image and have all of the confusion erased before you even look at it. The animal is placed in a delicate balance of environmental choices. Some species are in direct conflict with each other, others are in perfect harmony. But the thing you're invited to focus on is just that moment, just that setting, with just that species. This picture is a painting, and by the way, Charley Harper was considered a painter. Everything he did, he painted first. Every one of those silk screens is a painting, originally. And the silk screen studio took it over and made it into a print. So Charley's considered a painter. This is one of the few paintings in the show. The blackbirds, and this one, the flamingo. But what's beautiful about this, and I don't know how well you can see it. I don't know if it shows up way in back. But I want you, when you go in the gallery, pay real close attention to the line that is completely around the edge of the format that he wanted to show us. And then realize, wait a minute, he cut that flamingo in half at that point. Wait a minute, look at this one. Its head is the only thing sticking in. Well, what's this one? Well, it's up so close, it's so big, you don't even see the body. This is how he determined for us to see each image of what he created. He left out the stuff that didn't count. He brought in the stuff that did, and this is what you see. Who would have ever thought, really and truly, that learning from art could be so beautiful? Thank you.